Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we're going to be doing Tyrion VII, A Clash of Kings. I feel like I say this for pretty much every Tyrion chapter of this book. Just another awesome chapter as we finally get to see a little bit more of the seeds of Lancel and Cersei's relationship and how Tyrion reveals that to both the audience and to Lancel himself. Seeing a little bit more of Tyrion and Shay's dynamic, which we've kind of not seen as much since the beginning of the book. We're seeing it now, and it's very relevant as we're getting into kind of the second half of the book. We have to really establish Tyrion and Shay more because it's going to be a really big focal point of the next book. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive into Tyrion 7 and get into page 333. The rushes were scratchy under Tyrion's bare feet as Podrick Payne wakes Tyrion up unexpectedly. He's being awoken in the middle of the night. Very weird, right? Of all the times that you would go and, ask Tyrion for something or whatnot, why the middle of the night? And also, when this message is sent, it's really important to understand who it's being sent from. Who would Cersei send in the middle of the night to bring a message to Tyrion, and what is the significance there? These are all things that Tyrion is going to utilize. And Tyrion himself understands the game that's being played. Cersei wants Tyrion to maybe be a bit agitated or to be woken up to assert her dominance over him, but Tyrion's going to use that to his own favor. He's going to make somebody like Lancel wait, and that's something that's going to get under Lancel's skin. Tyrion, still sleepy, tells Podrick to take his cousin to the Solar and says he'll come down shortly. Tyrion notes it's well past midnight, judging by the darkness outside, just kind of reinforcing what I just talked about. This is very unusual. He suspects Cersei is behind the visit, not Lancel himself, which is very apparent. Lancel would not be calling upon Tyrion if it wasn't for somebody else's influence. Tyrion often stays up late reading by candlelight, reviewing Varys' reports and Littlefinger's financial records, so he's not really all that bothered by this because he's somebody that stays up a good amount of time. We've seen this in the past with Tyrion in A Game of Thrones and also in this book as well. This is something that you would think would be to utilize to your advantage. Take Tyrion when he's still groggy, not at his full wits. Well, that doesn't work on somebody like Tyrion, who's used to staying up far later than everyone else. He splashes tepid water on his face from a basin, and he feels the cold night air on his bare skin. Knowing Lancel is impatient and young, Tyrion deliberately makes him wait. I think a lot of us, when we're younger, are like that. Think about, for instance, Christmas, right? When you were younger, you couldn't wait to open up the presents and do all that stuff. Like the same idea. When you're younger, you just don't have the patience that you usually do as you get older. Now, some people never grow out of that. Some people are just naturally very impatient, but that is something that Tyrion's going to use against Lancel. Tyrion enters to find Lancel pacing before the hearth, reinforcing what Tyrion was trying to do. Lancel can't sit down. He's very eager to be done with this. He's dressed in slashed red velvet with black silk undersleeves and wearing a jeweled dagger and a gilded scabbard. Lancel is very finely dressed, and this is maybe not that surprising given Lancel is part of House Lannister, the ruling family at this point. But it is kind of interesting to note if you think about the differences from Lancel before Robert died and after. Very stark difference if you're somebody like Tyrion who would notice those things. Tyrion greets Lancel, makes a sarcastic comment about his unexpected visit, which gets us into page 334. Sir Lancel tells Tyrion that the Queen Regent Cersei commands him to release Grand Maester Pycelle. And if you're looking at this from Cersei's point of view, you completely understand this, right? Pycelle is completely loyal to Cersei, and so if you're Cersei, you don't want to lose more of your support and people that you can use to spy on others. But if you're Tyrion, the problem is here, Pycelle is somebody that you've now completely insulted. You've broken any relationship you possibly could have had with Pycelle, which, again, I don't fault Tyrion for doing so. Pycelle was a spy. He was somebody you could not trust on the council. The issue is going to be, as we see in the future books, when Pycelle does basically keep his station, he still has his influence later on in the books. This is a huge moment because when we get to, for instance, Tyrion's trial, Pycelle will be somebody that is used against Tyrion. And so in a lot of ways, Tyrion could have gone about just by simply killing Pycelle, but instead he uses Pycelle as a way to broker a peace between him and Cersei, which, in my opinion, is kind of short-term thinking. I don't think Pycelle is all that needed by Cersei. I don't think she'll be that upset if he was killed, but you understand it's more that Cersei feels like Tyrion is stepping on her toes, which he definitely is. And so Tyrion is trying to somehow, again, please her again to where he can do more actions. He can continue running the city without Cersei being that big of an issue. Because Cersei, well, at least in the last chapter anyway, had a sickness so that she wasn't able to really be ruling. Tyrion could operate more by himself. That's now wearing off. Lancel then presents Tyrion with a crimson ribbon with Cersei's lion's seal as her warrant. Tyrion acknowledges it and sarcastically hopes Cersei isn't overexerting herself after her illness. This has two meanings because Tyrion is one, the person that poisoned her to begin with, and also he's wondering why Cersei is up this late after being sick. So it's just Tyrion slowly putting on the gas pedal, accusing Lancel without him really understanding it. Lancel replies curtly that Cersei has fully recovered, but Tyrion thinks to himself he should have given her a larger dose to delay her recovery. This is something that definitely could have helped Tyrion. If Cersei would have been out of the court, out of ruling for a longer period of time, Tyrion could have gotten away with a lot more things, but again, hindsight's 2020. So I still think Tyrion poisoning her made sense to get what he needed to get done, but now it's time to deal with Cersei now that she's a threat again. Though disappointed, Tyrion isn't surprised by her resilience and puts on a pleasant smile. He has to play that game again, that he's actually working in Cersei's interests. Tyrion asks Podrick to build a fire and offers Lancel a cup of mulled wine. Lancel, being again very prideful and really just wanting to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, he doesn't want to be talking to Tyrion in the middle of the night. He declines and reminds Tyrion he's there on Cersei's orders, not for drinking. Tyrion reflects on Lancel's newfound boldness, linking it to knighthood and his role in King Robert's murder. And again, I haven't been in the community the longest in terms of YouTube, but something that I think that he really brought to the front of the community is how we view Tyrion, especially in A Clash of Kings. And I think some great points that he brings up specifically is on the idea of, okay, why does Tyrion treat Lancel the way he does? In a lot of ways, Lancel is everything Tyrion wishes he was. Lancel, albeit, is not like as handsome as somebody like Jaime or as good a swordsman like Jaime. He has all these things, right? And Tyrion wants to sleep with his sister. We get that throughout the whole series. He has this weird fascination with Cersei that's also kind of links to Jaime as well and his jealousness of that. Lancel, in a lot of ways, has everything Tyrion kind of wishes he was. And so, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like Tyrion is bullying Lancel just because Tyrion isn't able to do those things. He's not able to be, a tall, handsome, knight guy. He is just himself. And so I think that's something that's interesting. It's a very human thing, right? You, in a lot of ways, even if you don't realize it, may be jealous of somebody else because they have something that you don't have. And that isn't to say that you're worse than that person. It just means you would like to have what that person has. Maybe somebody has a great physique, right? They have really big muscles, they have abs, and you wish you had those things, which you could always get. But it's just kind of that idea, but even to a larger extent with somebody like Tyrion, because he's not able to change, his physical height or things like that. It's the easiest comparison I could give is I'm somebody that deals with arthritis, herniated discs in my back, all that good stuff. I cannot do the normal things that people my age can do. I can't lift weights. I can't run, actively and stuff like that. So I do feel Tyrion in a lot of ways. I do find myself sometimes, jealous of other people because they're able to do certain things that I'm not able to do anymore. Tyrion pours wine and questions why Cersei didn't come herself if Pycelle is so important. That's a great question from Tyrion. If Pycelle is so important, why didn't she come, or why didn't she call a council meeting about it? She sends Lancel in the middle of the night. Lancel insists Tyrion must release Pycelle and declares Pycelle under the Queen Regent's protection. Lancel adds that Cersei won't allow the outrage and reminds Tyrion she is Joffrey's regent. Again, Cersei believes that she holds all the power here and all of that stuff, and that Tyrion should, blindly obey her, and that's just not what's happening. And Cersei, I think, as the book goes on, starts to realize that more and more because of actions like this. This isn't what Cersei wants at all. This is Tyrion acting in his own self-interest, not Cersei. Tyrion replies that he is the king's hand, which Lancel says the hand serves while the regent rules until the king comes of age. And Tyrion sarcastically suggests Lancel write it down for him to remember. It's really interesting because Tyrion, in a lot of ways, uses the same logic that Cersei does. What are paper shields and things like that, and all that stuff? it's power, right? Tyrion has all the power. He has the influence right now in the city. He has the men to back that up. Cersei has really just the title at this point. All of her support is really gone. Tyrion is in complete control of the city. And that's made even more apparent when we start talking about Sir Jacqueline Bywater, as he defied a royal command by Cersei, which implies to Tyrion already that Cersei has already tried to get Pycelle freed, but that people did not allow it, right? And so that tells you all you need to know. Tyrion holds the influence, he holds the power, and Cersei's kind of feeling that start to press in on her, that she's losing all of the power. Tyrion dismisses Podrick and again turns to Lancel for all this information that I just told you, and now Cersei demands Bywater's removal and arrest for treason. Lancel begins to issue a warning when finally the script turns. Tyrion allowed Lancel to go on and give him all these threats and things like that, but Tyrion interrupts him and refuses to hear warnings from Lancel. Lancel has no power here. Lancel is somebody that has been driven by his ego and his pride and all these things that Cersei's probably whispered in his ears, but Lancel and Cersei, unfortunately for them, hold no sway or power at this point of the story. Lancel corrects him, demanding to be addressed as a sir, and touches his sword in a show of threat. Now, what is so fantastic is a theme that we talk about a lot in book one. It pops up with people like Joffrey, for instance, like Robb, like Jon himself, is when people draw their swords or they imply violence with their swords, it's usually a sign of immaturity and people that shouldn't be wielding swords in general. And I love that George constantly brings up that theme. It's a theme throughout all of the books, and it's used here to show really how outmatched Lancel truly is. Tyrion notes to himself that Lancel's attempt at menace is undermined by his ridiculous mustache. He's barely even able to grow facial hair, and here he is threatening Tyrion, who has command of pretty much all the fighting men in the city at this point. It's not a great look for Lancel, but when you're Lancel at such a young age, you're driven by those things, right? You're driven by your pride and your ego and all this stuff. You don't really think about the situation at hand. Getting into page 335, Tyrion warns Lancel to lower his hand from his sword, threatening that Shagga would kill him if needed. Lancel blushes at this, likely realizing his involvement in Robert's death hasn't gone unnoticed. Now, this is where the noose starts to tighten. If you're Lancel, you thought, oh, nobody knew what was happening, and here's Tyrion who slowly breaks you down. Lancel, you can't attack Tyrion because one of his, mountain clan men will come in here and kill you. They have way better skill than you do, and even Lancel realizes that. And two, Tyrion knows some of your secrets. When Lancel claims he's a knight, Tyrion pointedly asks if Cersei knighted him before or after she took him into bed. And this is the big reaction. I will say, the show plays out this scene from the books so perfectly. The acting by both the actors who play Tyrion and Lancel in the show, they are just fantastic in this scene. And even when I read this chapter, I just think of the show. Like that's not the case with a lot of the book. I kind of have my own way I view the book versus the show, but this is one of those scenes from the show that's just it's ingrained in my mind for the book. And Lance's reaction confirms the truth. It validates what Varys had already told Tyrion if that wasn't already a good enough source. Lancel doesn't hold his emotions all that well. As soon as Lancel starts to kind of blush or show, emotion or shock, Tyrion knows the game is up. Tyrion mocks Lancel's silence and challenges him to deny the accusation. Lancel demands the accusations to be withdrawn, but Tyrion threatens to tell Joffrey that he helped murder the king to sleep with his mother. Could you imagine Joffrey if he found out this information? Regardless of what you want to think about Joffrey, Joffrey would 100% kill Lancel, maybe torture him, whatever you think is going to happen. And Lancel realizes that as well. Using Joffrey as, your card for power is a double-edged sword because it can be used against you as well. Lancel insists he didn't intend it that way, saying Cersei gave him the strong wine and that Lord Tywin told him to obey her in everything. And obviously, Lancel went a little too far, as Tyrion is going to mock him, asking if Tywin told him to sleep with her too, thinking of Lancel as a poor imitation of Jaime. And that really is what Lancel's been boiled down to. Lancel is this character that vaguely looks similar to Jaime, and Cersei has this weird ego narcissistic thing where in a lot of ways I don't think that she ever loved Jamie. I think she loves herself so much that she sleeps with the thing closest to her in her twin in Jamie. That becomes more and more apparent when Jamie and Cersei basically fall apart towards the later stretches of the book. That becomes even more apparent, right? And if you're Lancel, it's like I think Lancel is definitely a victim here. I do want to point to the idea that Lancel is this young kid. You know, his brain is not fully developed. He's really being taken advantage of by people that are good manipulators like Cersei and Tyrion. And yes, should Lancel have been sleeping with Cersei? No, he should definitely have not. But at the same time, Lancel is the underage guy versus Cersei, the one that's, using him. So I do want to give some pity here to Lancel. Lancel does not portray himself the best, but at the same point, he is also a victim in some of this as well. Lancel stammers that he was only following orders never meant for things to happen as they did. And Tyrion once again mocks him because look at what Lancel has gained, right? He's got a place at court, a knighthood, and Cersei's bed. And something Tyrion puts a lot of emphasis on because, well, Tyrion wants to sleep with his sister. We know that to be the case. And so if you're looking at Tyrion, a lot of the reason that I think he is how he is to Lancel is one because of the way Lancel holds himself, of course, but two, Lancel has a lot of things that Tyrion wishes he was able to have. Tyrion rises and says he'll tell Joffrey, prompting Lancel to collapse to his knees and beg for mercy. Tyrion coldly tells him to beg Joffrey instead. And this is the thing, right? Tyrion is doing a lot of this for performance and because it makes him feel good, especially when we get to the end of this chapter. It's made very apparent, but he is kind of just playing with this. He's bullying Lancel. He doesn't need to do all this stuff. He could simply tell Lancel he knows and that Lancel needs to be a spy, but he's drawing it out, right? He's putting terror into Lancel. He's doing this as like a bully would in say high school where a lot of their own insecurities are driving them being a bully. The same idea is applying here to Tyrion. That's what makes Tyrion so interesting is that Tyrion is not necessarily a good character. He's a very morally complex character with really human flaws. That's why Tyrion, I would say the first 3 books is probably the best character, right? In terms of his writing, right? Now, that falls off a little bit later in the series, but again, if we're just looking at the first 3 books, he has the most complete character arc, in my opinion. Lancel pleads further, asking Tyrion to hide the truth from the king and promising to leave the city and end the affair. Tyrion refuses and tells Lancel to obey Cersei as instructed, but now also to spy on her. So Lancel is being used as just a huge pawn. I do feel bad for Lancel, especially when we think about what his fate is going to be, but he's somebody that's being used as a double agent that it just can't end well. This cannot end well. He commands Lancel to report everything Cersei does, where she goes, who she meets, what is said, and what she plans. Tyrion makes it clear Lancel will serve as his informer. And that gets us to page 336. Lancel agrees instantly to spy on Cersei, swearing obedience without hesitation, which Tyrion appreciates. Well, what else can Lancel do? Lancel is stuck. He can't refuse Tyrion, or else he'll probably be killed by the king. If he does go along with this, well, he's still likely going to be killed by someone. Whenever Cersei figures it all out, he'll be killed. If Jaime comes back and figures it out, he'll be killed. It's a lose-lose situation, and that's what Tyrion kind of thinks about as well. Tyrion offers him wine and assures him it's safe, joking about boars and there not being any, so they can drink. They don't need to get, even if they get drunk, there's nothing that's going to accidentally kill them. Lancel drinks stiffly, and Tyrion encourages him to smile, praising Cersei's beauty and promises potential rewards, including a lordship if Lancel proves clever. Tyrion knows this is all just a game, right? He knows none of that's going to come to pass based upon the game that's being played here, but you also see him being a little bit jealous of Lancel being with Cersei. Tyrion instructs Lancel to make Cersei trust him completely and to tell her that Tyrion fears her, seeks peace, and will act only with her approval going forward. Lancel then hesitates about Cersei's demands, prompting Tyrion to say he'll release Pycelle the next day, though he admits Pycelle suffered some in the Black Cells. We saw what the Black Cells were like with Ned. Somebody like Pycelle is not going to fare much better. Now, I will also say here is that Tyrion does cleverly get Cersei to kind of back down a little bit for them to stop, Cersei from impeding on what he's trying to do and stuff like that. He's using Pycelle as a brokering chip, and I've talked about that already in this video, but it has a good short-term effect for Tyrion, but in the long run has a pretty bad effect as well. Tyrion adds that Cersei can keep Pycelle or send him to the wall, but he won't sit on the council again. If you're going to give her back Pycelle, don't let Pycelle have the same amount of influence that he had before. Make him pretty much irrelevant, and that's a really good idea of what Tyrion does here. And regarding Sir Jacqueline Bywater, Tyrion tells Lancel to assure Cersei he may be won over in time, that Lancel will be able to get Jacqueline away from Tyrion and on Cersei's side. So again, Tyrion's playing this quite perfectly. And again, if Cersei was smarter, she would kind of understand more of what's going on. Like, this is all too good to be true, especially with the actions that Tyrion has done. So again, it goes to show that Cersei's clever, but she's not as smart as she thinks she is, something that Tywin straight up tells her. Tyrion then issues a final command. Since Robert is dead, it would be disastrous if his widow appeared pregnant. Now, this would really be bad for a number of reasons, right? Cersei should, in terms of the public persona already, they're against the Lannisters a lot. A lot of people like Renly instead of the Lannisters at this point. If she was to get with a child, there's a lot of rumors that could come from that, especially if the child does not come out looking like Robert. There's going to be whispers of, oh, maybe it's Jaime, and maybe it's Lancel who's been really close to her, or maybe it's some other random person. Either way, it would make Cersei look really bad. It's kind of a foreshadowing to a Feast for Crows and Dance when she has to basically make her walk of atonement because of her sleeping with other people, right? That's more or less what Tyrion's kind of foreshadowing here, is that the image of the queen is very important. Or I should say the queen regent at this point. Lancel stammers and blushes, confessing that he only ejaculates on Cersei's belly as ordered, not inside her. And Tyrion mockingly approves, telling him to continue but to avoid impregnating her at all costs. Lancel bows stiffly and leaves. And Tyrion feels a bit of pity for Lancel, but albeit he's still making Lancel play this role because Lancel is not really that smart, and also he's in a doomed position, like I've already talked about. If Jaime was to come back, if Cersei figures out what's going on, Lancel is a dead man. But that'll get us into page 337, where we get to the second half of the chapter, where we focus more on Tyrion and Shae's relationship. Tyrion feels restless and knows he won't be able to sleep again tonight. And I think another thing kind of stirs within Tyrion. Upon confirming Lancel and Cersei's relationship, I think that Tyrion feels a bit of loneliness and he craves for Shae. He finds Podrick asleep outside his solar and wakes him, ordering him to summon Bronn and saddle 2 horses. Podrick groggy repeats horses, prompting Tyrion to sarcastically describe them. And if you're Pod, what would you be thinking here? Your master or Tyrion wakes you up at probably around 2 to 4 a.m. asking about horses, you would be taken aback as well. Bronn arrives shortly, asking who angered Tyrion, who replies Cersei as ever, and jokes about being mistaken for Ned Stark. Again, Cersei doesn't understand who she's playing this game with, right? She thinks she's still playing the game with people like Jon Arryn and Ned Stark. Tyrion is not above playing the dirty game, something that Cersei just hasn't really figured out yet. Bronn jokes that Ned was taller, and Tyrion retorts that he wasn't after being beheaded by Joffrey. Despite the dangers, Tyrion feels secure with Bronn as they ride out through the city at night. And Tyrion should feel pretty secure. Bronn is very capable. Bronn is being paid really well at this point. There's no reason to really doubt Bronn's loyalty as of right now. They exit via Postern Gate and travel through dark alleys and shadowed streets, passing shuttered homes and only encountering an old woman carrying a dead cat. Now, there's a lot of significance here, something that really is not a focus of this chapter, but think about it like this. King's Landing, especially for the poor, already was a tough place, but now think about what they're going through in the middle of a siege. Think about what they're going to go through now that food is not coming into the city. There's no food from the south coming to the city. There's no food being imported. How do you eat, right? How do you provide for your family? And unfortunately, things like cats and dogs might become a little bit more desirable so you don't die, right? That's what a lot of these people are going to be thinking about. You think about Stannis and the Siege of Storm's End, he has this same issue. And so it's really a big moral complexity when you think about how people are when they're desperate and they're watching their children starve to death. Would you be able to eat your own dog, eat your own cat? Like, that's something that no person should ever have to make a decision on, because our pets are family to us. But how do you measure their life versus watching your child suffer, starving every single day? It's an interesting question. It's a very deep question. And I don't think anybody can truly answer that until they've experienced it. So I love to sit here and say we'd all not eat our dogs and cats, but unfortunately, that's just not the case all the time. So let's move on. Tyrion reflects bitterly on past hands of the king, like Ned Stark and Jon Arryn, who are too honorable to match Cersei's cunning. Now, I will say this. I've talked about this at lengths with Ned. If you haven't seen my Game of Thrones rereading, I would highly recommend it. It's very similar to this, but with just the Game of Thrones. I was still, those videos are older. I know some of you guys probably don't realize that, because on this channel they get uploaded like basically daily. Those are mainly like from a year and a half to 2 years ago. So, keep that in mind. A lot of the quality has changed. But I will say that Ned, I don't think, is as stupid as people say he is. He had the winning position up until the very end. Until Robert died, he had the winning hand. And unfortunately, things did not go well for him. The brothel they reach is busy despite the late hour. And here we go with the names. I know there's some people that really like to get on me about names. I'm not going to say the names right, probably. I try, but I just don't, more than likely. Chatea welcomes them and takes them to the common room. Bronn heads upstairs with the girl. While Leia is occupied, Chatea offers to prepare the turret room for Tyrion. Tyrion agrees to wait and accepts a cup of wine. Again, Tyrion just has to do performances, right? He has to show that he's going to this brothel, it's nothing new, and all of that stuff. As we get into page 338, Tyrion notices that the wine served is poor compared to the usual Arbor vintages, and Chatea apologizes. You have to remember, there's nothing coming into the city. It's affecting, the quality of life for a lot of people, even now, lordlings and things like that. People like Tyrion, who is the hand of the king, the most powerful person right now in the castle, and yet even he is having to drink not as great wine because of the war. But Tyrion agrees, saying it is a common issue. She excuses herself with grace, and Tyrion reflects on her elegance and sense of dignity, rare among whores. And this is a weird subject to me, because you think about, the way women are valued in this society, and the way that if you're a woman and you're born and you're not like a daughter of a high lord or one of those things, just a lord in general, you're more than likely not going to get a nice place in society, right? There's not a lot of career paths or avenues for women. So I think it's great that some women are able to find dignity when they're being put in such a difficult position. He muses that motivation, not just action, defines a person's worth, and finds some comfort in that thought, because it also kind of goes back to himself as well. He is questioned constantly by others, and he kind of is thinking about his own motivation of him wanting to get more. And some of his motivation is not the best, let's be honest, but it is something that drives him. Other patrons eye him with unease as he recalls how one man tried to spit on him during a previous outing, only to hit Bronn and lose his teeth for the effort. Dancy, a red-haired, freckled, playful girl, plops into his lap and flirts aggressively, as Tyrion politely declines, telling her he prefers Alea. Dancy playfully protests and makes a bold move, grabbing him through his breeches. Alea appears in the doorway, cool and poised, and calls Tyrion to her. And if you're thinking about it from this point of view, if you're one of these other sex workers, you're thinking, well, you get paid quite well to sleep with the hand of the king. That's what I would be thinking. Now, there is also a bet that's going on about somebody being able to steal Tyrion away from Alea, but again, we know that's not really why Tyrion is here. Tyrion stands and disentangles himself as Dancy, unfazed, teases him with a promise of next time. As Alea leads him upstairs, she explains that Dancy has a fortnight to win Tyrion's favor, or she'll lose her black pearls to another girl, Marie. Marie, a pale, solemn beauty with silver hair, is described as lovely but joyless. Interesting that we see somebody with silver hair in King's Landing. Could this be somebody that is maybe from Targaryen blood? Very possible. We don't know all that much about Marie, but could be the case. Or maybe she's just from Essos. It's more common in Essos than it is in Westeros, but it is something that's interesting. Tyrion expresses sympathy, but Aelia playfully challenges him to sleep with Dancy. He says maybe, but Aelia smiles knowingly, saying he won't, and he agrees silently. And this is where kind of the weird relationship with Shae and Tyrion is really brought up. Though Shae is just a whore for Tyrion, Tyrion considers himself loyal to her after his fashion. It tells you something right away. Tyrion wants Shae to be more like his loyal girlfriend. Like he is loyal to her, even though he's paying her. And when you put that into perspective, it's Tyrion in a lot of ways trying to get what he thought he had with Tysha, which we know he did have. Very confusing sentence. He's trying to find that again. And so, because he's trying to find that, because he's trying to see that through a rose tinted glass in a lot of ways, he's not seeing what this truly is. He pays Shae extremely well. Of course, she's going to play the part. And that really comes out in the next book. But Tyrion is trying so hard to convince himself that isn't the case. Getting into page 339, in the turret room, Tyrion casually asks Aelia what she does while he's away. She stretches out and says she sleeps more now thanks to him, and that Maria is teaching them to read. Tyrion replies that sleep is good, but books are better, giving her a kiss before heading into the secret tunnel. If you are somebody like Aelia, you're getting a lot out of this, right? You're getting some free time from having to constantly be sleeping with dudes. I mean, you would take that, right? And, reading, I agree. Reading is really great. Now, I do think sleeping is better than reading because you have to be able to be functioning well, and you usually need good sleep to do that. To read at your most attention because you're well rested. But Tyrion's kind of just a different animal when it comes to books. As he rides out on his gelding, Tyrion hears distant music and reflects wistfully. It reminds him briefly of Tysha, the girl he once loved, only to learn she'd been a lie, orchestrated by Jaime. And you think about how that changes Tyrion so much, right? It's such a cruel thing that was played on Tyrion is that Tyrion once had, true love. Him and Tysha were in love. And you think about how that now is impacted in Tyrion, who believes that isn't the case, that there is no chance that he can find love himself. He has to pay for it. And even now, he's trying to so badly believe that this is what love is, and that he loves her and she loves him back. That's just not the case. He tells himself he's free of her now, that he doesn't need memories or meaningless encounters. He has Shae. At the gates of the manse, he pounds until one of the guards, a hair-lipped Bravosi with a lazy eye, lets him in. Tyrion had insisted on hiring only the ugliest, most unlikely men to protect Shae. Eunuchs, brutes, and outcasts, anyone unlikely to tempt or threaten her. But see, this right away should get to the peak of the issue. If you're worried about your woman sleeping with a bunch of other guys just because you're not around, is that a good partner for you? If you can't trust your partner, are you truly in a healthy relationship? I mean, think about this right now. If you're watching this video, you have a spouse, you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever you want to say. If you can't trust them to say go out on a night with, their friends, are you in a good relationship? Right? That's the point I want to get here, is that Tyrion subconsciously even realizes this isn't what he thinks it is. Though he briefly considered using his loyal mountain clansmen like Shella's Blackears, he knew it would expose the secret too easily. The risk of revealing Shae was too high, and that's the truth of it. If you all of a sudden started seeing a bunch of mountain clansmen protecting this one area, you know Tyrion is protecting something. And then the jig is up, because Cersei could use that against him. Still, he worries that the sellsword's loyalties, driven by coin, isn't as dependable as the honor of his savage allies. That's the truth. If Tyrion ever comes to a situation where he's out of gold, he's out of power, things could go very badly for him. Getting into page 340, when Tyrion arrives at the manse, one of the guards takes his horse, and Tyrion asks if Shae has been woken, and is pleased to hear she hasn't. In the quiet warmth of the bedchamber, he finds her asleep, naked atop the feather bed, bathed in the dim firelight. He's struck by her beauty and innocence, more alluring than any other woman he's known, and despite not intending to wake her, desire overtakes him. And the two basically have sex, and we end out the chapter with Tyrion thinking about his current situation. He thinks of the game he's playing in King's Landing, the war, the politics, the danger, and he feels a thrill at being at its center. In a lot of ways, this really reminds me a lot of what we kind of talk about with, say, The Mob. A lot of the themes that are in the show Sopranos is that danger, that risk, that high reward, stuff like that. Kind of the same idea of Breaking Bad with Walter. It's kind of here with Tyrion as well. Like, he likes being in this muddy game of the Game of Thrones, and that's what he lives for. And that's going to be his downfall because in a lot of ways he oversteps. But despite all the lies and betrayals that surround him, he feels certain of this one thing. He loves his life and he loves her. He loves this life because he has power, wealth, he has his woman in Shay. Unfortunately, that's not going to last long for Tyrion. He's at the top of his power. This is the highest his power has ever been throughout the whole books, and it will come crumbling down. But think about this, and this is why Shay's betrayal in the next book is so powerful. It's because Tyrion believes this love is truly a thing. Now, Tyrion might love Shay, right? He might love Shay in his own way. I don't really think he loves Shay that way. Like, in a lot of ways, I think Tyrion lusts after Shay and more likes the attention she gives him back because it seems genuine because Shay is good at acting. That is what's going to be the heart of it. Out of all the mistakes that Tyrion makes, Shay is kind of the biggest one. It's his one weakness that he shares with his father in Tywin. But that'll get us through Tyrion 7, and a great chapter. I mean, it focuses so much on Tyrion as a character. I mean, every chapter is great to read. You know, him and Lancel is some peak George R. R. Martin writing, in my opinion. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.